It's more than just science or technology or engineering and math. It's all of those things. It's integrated. We've heard a lot of people talk about that today. Let's come back to the design principles beyond access and equity. One of the major things that I've found in my work previously, working with groups that are collaborating in this space, is that there needs to be a sense of mutual accountability. So it's great to have all these stakeholders at the table, but we can't all just be piling on the K-12 folks and say, hey guys, you got to do this. You know, we need to have the business community stepping up and saying, we're going to be part of this. This is our role. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to pledge and commit to part of this effort on an ongoing basis. So every group needs to know their roles, but they also have to have a sense of shared and mutual accountability among everybody to do this work collectively and to reach that end game. I'm also going to talk a little bit about how we go about helping regions actually form. And today was really exciting for me to actually see, because this is really happening. You guys are on a path to becoming a regional alliance or a regional network. And we would love to work more with you to get through that process into a next step. I can tell you a little bit about what some of our other groups that we're working with are doing. Some of them have identified lead organizations or champions. Some of them have been around many, many years. Like in San Diego, for example, we're working with the San Diego Science Alliance. It's been around 15 years. They do great work. They've done much of this work that you guys are talking about right now. They've got an amazing website. They've got an event calendar that everybody is posting up events. They've got a distribution list of 4,000 people to get weekly emails. They're doing all kinds of events. They've got guidelines for what it means to be a high-quality STEM out-of-school program. That every program that wants to come to them can say, have I met these criteria to be recognized by the San Diego Science Alliance as a high-quality STEM program? Now, they've got a lot of work to do as well, and they realize that. And they've committed to a design process that they're going to go through. They're going to develop a road plan. They're going to develop their vision. And they're also setting metrics, and this is one of the things that I want to talk about as well in terms of the design process. I think it's really critical that we can all agree upon at least a few high-level goals in how, over time, we will come to measure the success. So we need to have a baseline. We need to know what it is today and where we hope to go in 2 to 5 years. And I don't pretend to tell you what that should be. I mean, I think that's something that has to develop organically. I can give you some examples of other groups around the state and what they're doing. So for example, Cal State University East Bay, President Mo Kayami is working there with the Gateway STEM Partnership, which is led by Emily Brizendine. They're using Strive as a national model. I don't know if any of you know Strive. It's a cradle-to-career model, and they're focusing on STEM. And they have actually gone through and done all the data analysis. They have different data points at their entire pipeline, from K all the way through workforce. And they've got a very, very detailed set of data and metrics. They're measuring the gaps at each of those points between their different subpopulations. They're measuring the different districts, school districts that are part of their overall network. And they're going to measure themselves against those metrics over time. And they're bringing in informal providers, they're bringing in all the school districts, they're working with the business community, they're working with the faith-based community as well. The minority community is a part of that effort. So, you know, that's they're really sophisticated in terms of how they're approaching this from a strategic point and how they're going to measure progress over time. Again, I think part of the beauty of what we're trying to do is not to dictate to any group around the state what you should be doing, but to just give examples and to show what other groups are doing. Some of them may be more advanced. There are others that are just also in the stage of starting out and also grappling with how do we bring people together, what does it look like in terms of a planning process, a design process. So we do have a certain, I won't call it a checklist, but a number of things that we're looking at in terms of regions that we would hope to work with, in terms of knowing, you know, when do we know if we're ready? You know, what does that mean to be ready? And these are just a group of items that we've developed over time that might help you think about, you know, how will we know when we're there in terms of, as a group, as a region. One of them, number one, demonstrate strong leadership and commitment to CSLNet's overall goals and design principles. So we've just talked about those. Has developed a sense of community vision and comprehensive metrics and how they're going to implement that. That's what I just talked about as well. Has a critical mass of stakeholders at the table, which here today I see that critical mass definitely is already in place here. The region can demonstrate the capacity to convene people and communicate across stakeholder groups. And this goes to some of the communications and website and different communication vehicles that I think you're already beginning to talk about. And then a fifth one, partners in the network commit resources to the effort. So somebody's got to step up and say, we're willing to help support this effort and sustain it over time so that it's not going to just kind of peter out. You know, we need to have somebody who's going to step up and say, we want to commit ongoing resources to this for a period of time. Otherwise, it's never going to get off the ground and get the momentum it needs. And then finally, with the groups, we're actually going to enter into letters of agreement that basically verify the intent for the regional partnerships to work with CSLNet as an overall state network to advance the overall objectives. And basically, it just kind of reiterates a number of those things that we just talked about. So that's kind of what we're working with a number of other groups around the state right now. I'm extremely encouraged by what I see here today. I think you have just a tremendous amount of assets, resources, enthusiasm, passion, everything that is needed to be an amazing group that can really, really scale and advance STEM learning for all students in this area. With that, I know we're a little late on time.
No, it's okay. You want to take some questions?
Yeah, I would be happy to take questions. Happy to talk a little bit more about the national aspects as well, if you're interested in that. We're partnering with a number of other state networks around the country to really surface a lot of these issues and work collaboratively with them as well, focusing on policy. That's one thing I didn't hear much talked about today, was the policy environment around STEM education. And that's a very active area right now, and something that we hope as a statewide network to be able to supply out to each region. There's a give and get, right? So if we're going to work with regions from a statewide perspective, we want to be able to provide resources and capacity to each of the regions to help plan, implement, but also from a communication standpoint, I love this discussion about branding, making STEM cool. That's one of the things that we're talking about. How can we do that as a statewide network? And then the policy, and there's tons of things happening in Sacramento. There's lots of stuff happening in Washington, D.C. How do we get that information out? How do we communicate? How do we develop policy positions as a network that bubbles up, from the grassroots effort, but also is aware of what's happening in Sacramento in real time? And we have the capacity to do that, both as a core team, but also as a network that's out there. And you've got your Congress representatives here today, which is exciting, that we can connect to as well. So I'm going to stop there and take questions or comments, other ideas. Yes, in the back.
I'd like your input, your views on two of my concerns. One is, we have a devil of a time talking with schools. We can't get through to science teachers. It's like they don't exist for us, or we don't exist for them. There's a lot going on, and so many times you may touch base with them later on and say, never heard about it. What do you mean? Oh, that was neat. I never heard of it. That's number one, trying to get to our schools and our science teachers and math science teachers. And number two, something that is far larger and far more dangerous. And I know someone in this room, Ray Wyman, who's very concerned about climate science. The nation seems to be on an anti-science kick. You go out and talk science, and there, in some cases, are some very, very sophisticated, well-paid operations going on to fight tooth and nail to disengage the public from science. And I'm wondering what your views are.
I'll take the first one first. I'm not sure I'm actually qualified to answer either of those. I think in terms of talking with science teachers, today is a perfect example. We're doing that right now. I mean, to see teachers in the room, school leaders in the room, and the business community in the room, we have to start. And I think it will be by continuing to have these kinds of convenings. And I hope that's something that you'll consider doing as a regular event. Maybe it's an annual a big convening with lots and lots of people and smaller convenings on a quarterly basis or something like that. But we have to start those. We have to start those conversations, and I think it's this kind of network that can actually facilitate those kinds of conversations more frequently than exists right now. I know that teachers are extremely busy. They have lots and lots of responsibilities in their classroom, but we need to connect them to their professional communities. We need to connect them to the business community. And I really think that some of the the mentoring ideas that we're talking about here today can be a real venue to open up those conversations here locally. And I'd be happy to connect you too with some of the other regional alliances that I think may have some experiences in helping to facilitate that. I'm thinking about Nancy Taylor, for example, in San Diego. She has great relationships between their business community and their science, and she's actually the science coordinator within the County Office of Education. So I think she might have some ideas for you, because I think she's had a very strong and long history in terms of working with their business community and opening that dialogue. The second one, in terms of the anti-science sentiment, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with you about that, and I was privileged to be at a CCST and National Academies convening recently, where they were talking about some of these issues and issues of science integrity, and there was a gentleman who was one of the top climate modelers, climatologists, who was talking about how groups had actually tried to literally stop him from working by filing just incessant FOIA requests to monitor every email that he's sending out. And they're trying to systematically shut down what they're doing in terms of climate modeling, which is just, it's unthinkable that people could do that. But you're right, it is a very well-financed group. Somebody talked to one of my groups about school boards and their importance today, and trying to get and support candidates that are STEM friendly, that understand what's happening and can help create a healthier climate, I think, for conversations. But I agree, it's a big problem, and I think part of it is the communications and outreach strategy as well, which we really need to focus on, and opening up those conversations. And I think it starts in schools, school boards as well, as a great place to do that.
Two-part question, just in general. You're going through the state and looking at all the different efforts related to this, and you're identifying what's working. So are you publishing that in some way that we can kind of look to for, your guidance? You're seeing what's working, so we can kind of latch onto that. And then second part would be, how can we leverage, everyone else is doing the same exact thing in their particular geography, how can we leverage that here?
Yeah. We haven't published anything yet, and we're fairly nascent in our organization. We're about a year old, and one of the things I'm thinking about, and maybe you can help me think about that, is how to document that process for each of the regions, because they're literally going through this at the same time. There's some of the organizations have been around a long time, but now they're coming back and really thinking about what it means to be a STEM-focused alliance. Like the San Diego Science Alliance is now really thinking about what it means to become a STEM-focused alliance, slightly different, broader than just science. But we don't actually have a really good system in place yet to capture that. So I'd love to talk to you about that if you have some ideas.